I think he's been a state representative since 2002. He's a state rep representing East Montpelier and Middlesex. He's also chair of the House Natural Resources and Energy Committee. In the middle, we've got Tom Hughes. He's VPIRG's campaign director for Energy Independent Vermont. For those folks that don't know, Energy Independent Vermont is the campaign to put a price on carbon pollution in Vermont. He's also been the executive director of Democracy for America and has run a renewable thermal company in Vermont too. And then over here we've got Gabrielle Stebbins. Gabrielle Stebbins for the last 5 years has been the executive director of Renewable Energy Vermont, or REV. Before that she was a program manager at VEIC, and now she's on the board of REV. So I'm going to just pass the mic over to them just to have a few introductory remarks and to reflect on the film, and then we can take some questions.
All right, well, thank you so much, Nate. My name is Tom Hughes. I'm the campaign manager for Energy Independent Vermont. We're a statewide coalition working to put a price on carbon pollution here in the state. While I'm talking, I'm going to introduce Liz Edsel over here, who has a petition to sign up and join the Energy Independent Vermont Coalition. Let me tell you a few things about the campaign. Our goal is to put a price on carbon pollution, a gradually rising tax on fossil fuels that will slowly reduce consumption here in the state, and then we will return the revenues to Vermonters via weatherization support for low-income Vermonters and tax cuts for individuals, businesses, and a reduction in the state sales tax. This is a program which has worked well in other jurisdictions. British Columbia is the North American example of this, having implemented a carbon pollution pricing program, carbon pollution tax in 2006, and having their economy outgrow Canada for the past decade while reducing carbon pollution by over 15%. I'm going to be happy to take many questions about this, but why don't I leave it there, turn it over to either Gabrielle or the chairman, whoever would like to go next.
Good evening. It's a real pleasure to see so many folks here. Where I now exist, I didn't think any of you existed anymore. It's true. It's a little different feeling up there, but I want to remind folks that Vermont, for the last 15 to 20 years, has created just amazing policy on an energy future, and has been leading the nation and the world on efficiency, conservation, and renewable generation. And we're being so successful at this point that our growth spurt is causing discomfort. But discomfort should not mean stop. And unfortunately, from my perspective, those are the loudest voices that are beginning to permeate the State House. It's the world of stop and no. And if you don't agree with that, I urge you to please make your strong voices heard.
So I should correct, I'm not actually on the board of REV, the trade association that I used to sit on. When I was at REV, it became pretty clear to me that we needed to have some way to talk a little bit more about why people have to see more wind turbines, and why people have to see more solar panels, and what this means in Vermont, and what this might mean for us in terms of how we relate to a changing working landscape. So the board I actually sit on is it's an energy education fund, and it's to start to have that conversation of It used to be where we could rely on a few large plants or a few large demolition projects like tar sands, or the coal plants proposed in India, referencing the movie. And what that means when we start to talk about distributed generation and a lot of small renewable energy plants closer to home, closer to us, which means we need to see it and we need to own it. I wanted to just say a couple of things about the movie. I think there are a lot of touching things about the movie, about the fact that we do need to change our concept of what our story is as a human and as a society in Vermont, in the nation, in the world. I also think we do need to come together. No doubt, act locally, think globally, but this is way beyond that at this point. You can live off-grid and you can walk and bike everywhere, and that's not going to be the dent that we need. So we do need to rise up and talk and speak, but it can't just be to say no. It can't just be to say no nuke, no fracking, no coal. It has to also be yes. Yes, we're going to look at this stuff. Yes, we're going to have this be part of our working landscape. And to that point, I would just ask you, Chair Klein, he is not, if anything, he is speaking more calmly about the tenor and the tone at the State House, in the media, about what our energy choices are here in Vermont. Most of our elected officials, when they hear from a Vermonter about energy choices, what they hear is, we don't want this in our town or in our backyard or in the next person's backyard. And so I would just really urge you, I don't know what the conversation is and what the future path is, but it needs to incorporate yes, and it needs to incorporate a different storyline. Because right now, it's not fair to ask folks who are elected officials, they've been elected officials for 15, 20 years, passed amazing laws in efficiency and renewables, to have to stand up there and do those bold actions from that movie, but then also stand up there when there's real change. So I would just really urge you guys to have those tough conversations about what this new working landscape looks like, and let's celebrate moving forward. These policies, Vermont's jobs in energy and the clean energy economy, so energy efficiency and renewables, have increased all other sectors in terms of job growth here in Vermont, with 16,000 jobs just last year. Really great opportunity, bringing a lot of people back to Vermont, and fantastic opportunity to work together to build a new future.
Great, let's, questions? Yeah, I see one in the back.
Thank you.
Protest loudly.
First, I'd like to give you some background on my attitude, and that is, I totally believe that carbon pollution is adding to the natural cycle of climate change and creating worldwide problems, and we must do something about it. However, I am totally shocked to hear this panel say that their primary goal is a tax. Your primary goal is to limit the use of CO2 producing emissions, to limit the use of fossil fuels. And so I want to offer a modest proposal. And Tony Klein knows what this is. In World War II, they wanted to limit domestic consumption of petroleum products and sugar and other basic commodities. And they rationed. If we are serious about a fair and equal burden for reducing petroleum consumption, then we have to consider rationing. And why? Because Vermont and Maine are the two most rural states in the nation. The greatest percentage of people are out there on those 10-acre lots. And if we simply turn to a tax, who's it going to affect? It's not going to affect those folks that are making those big salaries of 60 or 70,000 a year. They're going to be able to buy their gas. And the rest of us in the backwoods, you know, are we going to be able to get to work?
So is the question about...
I urge you to consider rationing.
So we have a question about rationing. Thoughts, reactions?
Thank you. I for one, am going to advocate for a carbon pollution price. I do, however, feel like we should have the conversation in the State House about how we reduce our carbon pollution. And whether that's a cap and trade program, whether that's a carbon pollution price, whether that's rationing, let's have that conversation. I happen to think that a carbon pollution price is a viable, simple, effective, and fair mechanism for reducing carbon pollution and returning the benefits of the proceeds to Vermonters via low-income weatherization, additional tax rebates and credits for both individuals and businesses, and we can address some of the border issues along the Connecticut River Valley by lowering our state sales tax. Another question?
Naomi Klein makes it quite clear that one of the problems that we're confronted with is the issue of growth, continuing economic growth in order to bring the poorest people up into a decent way of living. How do we address the issue of growth and renewable energy? Won't we grow ourselves out of the use of renewable energy sources and continuing to have to build more and more and more? We're on a treadmill of growth. So how do we address the issue of growth? And what do we do about it?
That's a great question. But you know, here in Vermont, we don't have growth. We actually have population decreasing, number one. But you know, we have shown with our policies for the last almost 20 years that we've actually reduced our use of electricity, for example, through strong efficiency, education, and conservation. So we are actually, and the plan continues to be far more productive and sharing the, quote, wealth with people through much less use of the fuel source.
Yeah, I'll just say, I think there are a couple of different threads in the movie, right? There's the thread about capitalism and how the system of perpetual growth for perpetual all time on a finite planet, that doesn't quite work. And there are some other threads that renewables can really help and efficiency can really help. And, you know, renewables can help, efficiency can help. I think underlying that, we do have some real questions as to whether or not, you know, perpetually making more and selling more is possible on a finite planet. One of the most interesting books that I've read was about, you know, still having an economic structure, but having an economic structure that's based more around services and service delivery. But I think it would require, you know, that to me is a whole different kettle of fish. For me, focused so much on kettle of fish, focused on climate change. I think, you know, for me personally, climate change is such a big issue. I think let's do everything we can to reduce, become more efficient, and do what we can with renewables in a, you know, in a safe development way. The flip side of, like, do we get rid of capitalism entirely, I think is a very different conversation.
Dan, Joe. Back there, Dan.
just pick up on that for a second, because one of the things people miss is in the economy that we now have, we cannot pay back our debt without growth. We have a $70 trillion debt in the US, so unless we completely reimagine what we have as an economy, we need growth to pay back the interest on the debt. That's how the money system has worked and been created. We have a treasurer in the state who doesn't believe that we should be challenging these things and does not want to divest from fossil fuels because that is an element of keeping the state's growth going. Now, I haven't heard anybody stand up to the plate and say they would like to take her on, but that might be something that would be an issue for 350 to consider. But the real problem is right now that we are going to require another way of organizing the economy in the future if we are going to be able to survive what is going to be a diminution from future technological and population changes. Vermont is going to decrease in growth just because we don't make much here other than food, and we're not making as much of that as we should. So we're going to have to imagine how do we then get something like Germany. Did anybody see all those pictures of the windmills in Germany? They look so bad?
They're beautiful.
Okay, so should we be imagining a lot more effort here, and maybe we have to talk about then localizing like they did at the end. Remember the communities that they were building there? If we were building communities here that could then take on some things so it's not dependent on Green Mountain Power, maybe we should be having separate units, having their own supply of electricity, own supply of resources, and that becomes the organizing principle that are different than trying to do everything with a state tax and spend system.
So there have been efforts underway.
You're too loud.
Sorry.
You're way too loud. You're just blasting.
Yeah, just pull it
Sorry.
away.
Thank you. There have been efforts underway to look at green banks and looking at economic structures within the state to try and develop mechanisms so that there can be more community-owned, community-financed energy projects. Frankly, there could still be way, way more work done in that area.
So, I just want to reiterate what Joseph said to you, Tony. He was talking about economic growth, not population growth. And the whole system and the whole reason behind climate change is because our culture and economy are built upon growth. And that growth is being fueled by fossil fuels. And will continue to be fueled by fossil fuels even as we get renewables, because the energy curve is continuing to go up. We are not cutting back on our demand worldwide, primarily because of technology is going up. Now I'm going to read a short excerpt from Naomi's book that sort of puts this a little bit more in perspective, which wasn't in the film. It says, policies based on encouraging people to consume less are far more difficult for our current political class to embrace than policies that are encouraging people to consume green. Consuming green just means substituting one power source for another, or one model of consumer goods for a more efficient one. The reason we have placed all of our eggs in the green tech and green efficiency basket is precisely because these changes are safely within market logic. Indeed, they encourage us to go out and buy more new efficient green cars and washing machines. I think that is the fundamental thing we need to address. That point. I think the film did a great job of showing people who are standing up against the power elite, the 1/10 of 1% who is investing in all these things, but I don't think it really addressed how we as individuals are all involved in this. Every time we turn on our iPhones, we're enriching Apple, we're enriching Microsoft, we're enriching all the server companies and this incredible infrastructure that is very electricity intensive. So we can say we're doing a good job in Vermont, but are we really? Because we're so connected to the global world, we can't disconnect unless we make conscious efforts to do it.
Brian.
Yeah, sort of continuing along those lines, I really take to heart the message at the end of the film that we need to be saying yes and saying no a lot faster. And just like the Obama administration is trying to have it both ways with fossil fuel development, we're not in as extreme a situation, but we're in a similar situation here where we're actually looking at the biggest expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure here in Vermont. Certainly in the 35 years I've been here, with the pipeline that's planned down the Champlain Valley. And this Thursday, some of us are going to Moncton to stop an appraisal on some people's land that they're trying to take by eminent domain. But the bigger question for me is, what can we do, and it's really a question more for everybody here than for the panel, what can we do to come together and say no to any more expansion of fossil fuel infrastructure here in Vermont?
Well, the one thing that has to happen, which personally I've not heard yet, is what are we putting in place? I hear a lot of no, but I don't hear any constructive pathway forward. And yeah, the pipeline, you're right, okay? But what stays in place? Fossil fuel use. You're not reducing the use of fossil fuels by the reduction of that pipeline.
Do you want me to respond to that? The first
Fine,
step
yeah.
The first step is to stop the expansion. Then we can talk about addressing the problem of growth that Jeff raised, addressing the bigger question. I support the carbon pollution tax. I think it's a step in the right direction. I support most of the renewable infrastructure that's proposed. I think we need to do something about especially the involuntary consumption that's happening here. I mean, we have the oldest housing infrastructure in the state. The legislature's been trying for years to do something about funding weatherization. I think the carbon tax is something that will contribute to that. You know, I think we're thinking along similar lines, but we need to take it a lot faster, and we need to address the kind of systemic questions that Naomi Klein raised in the film and in her book.
Okay, yeah, let's take another one, and I want to make sure we include our. We've got we've got a policymaker, we've got an organizer, we've got an industry representative. So I want to make sure we involve them in the conversation. So questions geared to them. Yes, sir.
Tony Klein was asking about solutions. One of the sectors that really impact most of our energy use is our buildings. 40% of the energy that is being used in this country is in energy operations. We can reduce the heat load and the cooling load by 90% using better building codes and better enforcement. If we reduce that by 90%, we are not going to need pipelines, we're not going to need to pave our agricultural fields with PVs. Just the reasonable amount of renewable energy is going to make it. And as we speak, I mean, there are already technologies that address that and are viable in Vermont. We are right now getting the certification, the passive house certification for a building in Milton. It's a 25,000 square feet building for senior housing. That building is going to need only 125,000 BTUs. And in peak load at minus 90 degrees, it's going to need 165,000 BTUs. That's basically 2 wood stoves. And it's equivalent of 10 single-family homes. So we're going to be heating that building we're going to be heating 10 family homes with 2 wood stoves. But on the other hand, we are seeing here, just 1 mile from the State House, houses being built with 2 inches of insulation in
in the foundation. That is a tragedy. I mean, a tragedy for the future occupants and for the planet because of the carbon footprint that that building is going to have during the next 50 or 100 years of existence.
So thoughts on how to address efficiency in buildings?
Well, we have, thank you for that, Enrique. 10 years ago, we identified that we have 80,000 structures in this state that are under weatherized. We know that weatherization and efficiency is the biggest bang for the buck that we can get. We have low-income folks that we pour lie heap money in to help heating their house. We're not helping to heat their house, we're heating the outside because we don't connect weatherization to lie heap. We're just starting to do that. We have the people power, we have the workforce in place, we've identified the structures, and can you all tell me what the one missing ingredient is?
Money.
Oh, money is the missing ingredient. And nobody has the political will or the balls to put the money where it needs to go. We're sitting right now. Right now, we have a what's the tax on that?
Grocery receipts.
The grocery receipts tax is sunsetting again. The grocery receipts tax on your fossil heating fuels is what pays for low-income weatherization, and it is sunsetting. And so, guess what? Guess what we're going to do? We're going to fund it at the same level that it's been funded at for the last 20 or 30 years. And with the declining use of the fossil fuel, which is good, you have the declining revenue. And there is no political will to even increase that a fractional percentage to do what everybody knows is the best investment that we have. So those are the issues that we're facing.
I'll also point out that low-income weatherization wait list is over 2 years long because there's that much demand for it right now. I will say that there is a proposal on the table to put a price on carbon pollution and fund low-income weatherization, double, triple, quadruple the number of installers and people working in that field, so that we have a snowball's chance to get to 80,000 homes before the year 2020, which was the goal laid out several years ago.
So this is a question for Tony, whether the people who talk about the taxes being regressive because it's going to affect low-income Vermonters or people who are out in the rural areas, at the same time it's going to provide money to help people who can't afford to insulate their house, So, but that's not a direct connection that people make on political stump speeches, and they don't see that connection necessarily. Is there somebody who's figuring out a way to deliver that message that this is not a regressive tax? I haven't looked into this.
Are you talking about the carbon?
Carbon tax,
Okay.
yeah. That was
So this is what I've learned interfacing in this, and you know, I've put it out there and got it shoved down my throat, which is fine. But what I've learned is that when we say the government says we're going to create this tax and we're going to give it back to the people who can't afford to pay for it, they don't believe it. And it's as simple as that. And you know what? We haven't done a very good job in what we've done in the past to make people believe it. And that's what we have to overcome.
Okay,
It's a
great.
loss of trust.
I know people have been here for a long time, so let's just do a few more questions here. I see a hand right there, yeah.
Thank you. I just want to start this by saying the last 20 years I've lived in a home off the grid. I even raised goats like the nice people in the movie. But I wonder if the same question came up for all of you that it did for me. Where are they mining all the metals for all these renewables? Where are those mines? You know, and Mr. Klein, your fingerprints are all over policies that have silenced the communities in this state and have created situations where Sun Common can sell the wrecks. And you know, they're just, I mean, it's endless here, and I won't take up everybody's time with it, but the way I see it, the environment is losing with renewables in the same way every single one of those other technologies was doing it. And if we really want to change, we are going to have to undermine completely and shift capitalism. That's right. And there is, unfortunately, Sierra Club, I mean, one of the problems, the national office 4 years ago took $25 million from the fracking industry. You know, there's a real contradiction in the message of the movie and the renewables. It was an infomercial for renewables, and we're not. Naomi does question it in the book some, and it's not in there, but she says policy blunders are what created a situation where these giant renewable companies came in and rammed projects down people's throats, and she says that was wrong. So which is what's happening right now here in Vermont, which is why people show up at the State House to say, yes, we believe in climate change. No, we don't want to make the same mistakes with green technologies over the edge.
Let's give the panel a chance to respond.
So, you know, the fact is we are sitting in a room with lights and it is being heated. And let me just speak for a sec. If you look at a chart that shows the amount of intensity that goes into using fossil fuels and a kilowatt hour of fossil fuels or a kilowatt hour of wind or a kilowatt hour of hydro or solar, I don't think any of us up here or anyone who works in renewables or efficiency would say that there is no impact from using those energy choices. There is an impact to everything here except turning off the lights and, you know, putting on more sweaters. So that's why I like the movie, because it talks about how are we going to work together. I really struggle with the concept that we can't build wind and build solar because it still uses minerals. You know, there is a part of our society that uses energy. Do we need to use less of it? Without a doubt. Do we need to be more resourceful with it? Without a doubt. Do we need to consume less overall? Without a doubt. Do we still need to power up hospitals and schools and churches? Yes.
Nobody's saying you don't have to. I think we really have to think more about how renewables are business as usual disguised as concern for the planet.
Okay, let's do two more questions. I see a hand right here.
When we talk about how can there be a yes, I think looking to Germany is a really good example. I visited a friend there regularly from 1999 to 2008. And what I saw over that short time, which is the time that Germany was really subsidizing solar, was solar panels on tiled roofs on old barns and buildings. That would never happen in Montpelier because of the historic preservation part. But they shut down nuclear plants. They shut down coal plants. And so you can say, oh, this is, you know, buying into green energy and it's just the same, but it's not the same. It's not the same in Germany. And it's been over a period of about, you know, 10 to 15 years. And I think we need to be embracing putting solar power on the top of every roof. As I understand it, something like 30% of electricity goes into hot water across the nation. We should have something in a zoning thing to say, you build a new house, you put in solar hot water. You do it somehow. You do it somehow renewably. We need to start saying, we can't keep saying, no, we can't do solar panels, no, we can't do wind, no, we can't do this because it's still feeding into it. People are going to have houses, they have houses now, and we have to be thinking, what are the ways, what are the examples from other countries? And Germany it's a great example.
Any thoughts on that? Okay. Let's do a question from this side. Yes, ma'am.
I just want to say, small is beautiful. We live in Vermont, and we should do some of these things on a very small Vermont-based basis. I've been trying, a lot of the people in this group know, I've been trying to get solar panels on the top of this church, but it is a historic building, and they're afraid that it costs too much money, and historic preservation might not let it go through.
Great, great. I know there's lots, and we can certainly have more dialogue after this concludes. I just wanted to give the panelists a chance to get some parting shots, and particularly wanted to, my question, I guess, to you is what's happening this legislative session? Read the tea leaves for us. Is there stuff that you see that's percolating right now in Vermont?
And how do we force political will?
So I want to just share something with you. Yes, I have chaired the Energy Committee for many years, and along with that comes the media attention. And along with that comes the media attention and the media focus. But I have to tell you that there are many legislators in this room right now who work really, really hard. There are many members of the committee that I chair who are here, who work really, really hard on these issues. And quite frankly, it's embarrassing to me that people, give me all that, it's my fingerprints are all over the policies. Let me tell you about the policies of the state of Vermont for 15 years. Every policy bill that has been presented and passed has almost been by a unanimous vote. That's 180 members of the legislature whose fingerprints are all over it. In fact, the closest vote we had on any policy was 2-1. So the policies have been strongly supported. And but when you begin to have to take the policies and put the rubber to the road, I don't know what people expected, but when everybody talked about what renewables were, hydro, biomass, solar, wind, that's what it is. And that's where it has to come from. Otherwise, we closed our nuke plant. That was popularly accepted by the folks in the state of Vermont. We don't have coal plants anymore. You can look what it looked like on the shores of Lake Champlain. You've still got the hulk of the building there that they still don't know what the hell to do with it. So, it's change, it's reformation. Is it easy? No. Is it conspiracy? No. If you want to, and I'm going to bring them into the State House, it's not just rich, out-of-state developers that are building these things. There are developers who, and solar companies and people who are involved in wind and coming out of Vermont Technical College, born and raised in this state. It's the fastest growing job sector of our economy. 16,000 real jobs. Are there problems with it? Absolutely there's problems with it. Did I know that there was going to be problems with it? Did the legislature know? Did the members of my committee know? No, we didn't know. Do we want to form the solutions and solve the problems? Of course we do. But you heard all the divergent opinions in this room tonight, and we're supposedly the group that's united about going forward for a different world. It's hard. But I really wish that the finger pointing would slow down a little, and that we would talk to each other and work with each other instead of screaming at each other and accusing each other of things and coming up with all these conspiracies. That's not the way we can get things done. We can do this.
I'm going to mimic a little bit of what the chairman said. We can do this. The opportunity for Vermont to be a national leader on this and be a model for other states, for other countries on how we roll out, how we transition from the fossil fuel economy to the new cleaner, greener energy future is our opportunity. It's our opportunity for economic growth. It's our opportunity for new social growth in the state, new community growth. And whether it's divestment or whether it's a carbon pollution price or any of the other topics which are going on in the State House right now and across the state, you know, this is our opportunity not to talk about if we should be moving forward, but how we should do it. And the policy that the Energy Independent Vermont Coalition advocates for, we believe is fair, simple, easy to implement, and can be done that really reflects Vermont's values. So I encourage you all to engage with your families, friends, neighbors, and your legislators, and start the conversation about how we move forward with pricing carbon, not if we should do it.
And I'll just echo, it really is challenging, isn't it? You know, the fact that even in this room, to Chair Klein's point, there are so many different opinions as to how to get from A to Z, yet agreement that we should get somewhere. For the folks who are interested, for the folks who are interested in efficiency and renewables, I think Vermont is moving forward in a really, really solid way. I think for the folks who are more concerned about capitalism and about growth for growth's sake, you know, maybe do some research into, you know, the Coalition for Green Capital, and maybe come to the State House with a yes about how we can have more community-owned projects, and bring that closer to the German model, I think. And maybe there'll be a little bit more agreement moving forward. But at this point, the folks that have you know, significant funds to build projects with multi-million-dollar upfront investment, it tends to be folks that are not community-owned.
This meeting
Thanks a lot. I want to first thank our panelists.